Good morning, everyone. This is Aaron Mesh with Willamette Week. Today I'm here with Multnomah County's Communicable Disease Director, Kim Toevs. We're talking about what we've seen in the past few weeks as we head into autumn, a surge in Multnomah County and statewide of COVID-19 cases. Kim, thank you for finding a few minutes with us this morning.
Absolutely.
What are we seeing?
We're seeing an increase in cases. We're not seeing as much of an increase in hospitalizations. That's the good news that may follow. And we had known to expect that after Labor Day, we may see an increase, and it might take us 3 to 4 weeks to see that show up, because we saw that after Memorial Day weekend and we saw that after July 4th. And just in case anyone has been in the dark and not been aware of like how COVID is most likely to transmit, it's most likely to transmit between people who know each other because they tend to be close up to each other. They're talking for extended periods of time. They may not be as likely to be wearing masks as they would be in public or with strangers. So when we have these moments in our culture that we have a lot of social interaction, families gathering together, we have so far seen a really significant case increase. We've also been aware that the wildfire evacuations that happened in our region meant that a lot of folks were asking other families if they could stay with them. And that might have been a lot more like up close personal mixing of people for extended periods of time. And we also all expected last spring, when we thought about the fall, we thought, okay, well, we may get on top of this for a little bit and make progress. And then when people are indoors again in the fall, when flu and cold season is back, which tends to be times where viruses are transmitted between people anyway, we may see a bump up again. So there's 3 different reasons there that I gave you that we may be seeing the increases that we're seeing right now.
Back in August, the governor pleaded, I think would be the right word, don't have house parties, beach parties, gatherings on Labor Day weekend. Again, anecdotally, did people listen?
Some have, and some have gone ahead and had larger group gatherings. And so I think that I would say half and half. I understand that it's been a long year. There have been lots of things going on that have been really hard for folks here in Oregon and elsewhere. And I think there's a certain amount of like tiredness or fatigue with us repeating the same messages, asking people to not gather in the ways that they did previously. We still definitely are asking people to not do those larger group gatherings. And I know that the other tool that we had that we're going to be more limited in using now with the weather changing is the reduced risk of seeing people outside is actually quite significant. And as people move back inside, we're all going to try to have to figure out how to struggle with that so that people can continue to have some social interaction, but that it continues to be safe enough.
DHM Research did a statewide survey that I saw maybe a week ago that said that Oregonians like 8 in 10 are consistently wearing masks, but also something like 4 in 10, and I could be getting the number wrong, attended a party of larger than 10 people in the past 2 weeks. First of all, why isn't anyone inviting me? And second of all, how is it possible that this many Oregonians are still holding events, and where?
It doesn't take a very large apartment or house to fit 12 or 14 people in for a gathering. So I don't necessarily think that all of those, some of them may have taken place in the summer in campgrounds and other places, but it doesn't take a whole lot of folks together to be a site that a bunch of transmission can occur. Also, I won't ask you your age, but I do know that where we are seeing an increase in cases among younger adults and older teens. And so some of that group gathering just tends to be how people socially interact anyway at that age. And so I think that there may be a little bit of a locus of it that's age specific. Yeah, I was not entirely surprised. And the 8 out of 10 people who wear masks probably are not wearing masks indoors in their houses when they're hosting other people for a social visit.
Hospitalizations are down. Is that just because most of the people getting COVID are 20-somethings who went to parties?
The short answer, I would say is likely yes, that the case increases that we're seeing are among folks who are not the most likely to get severely ill and need hospitalizations. Um, Hospitalizations, luckily, are small enough number of people that are actually needing that like really high level of acute care, that, which is great. It also means that statistically, it's a little bit harder to see trends in that because there's just a lot of random variation. So looking week by week at hospitalizations is probably not adequate to look at a general overarching trend. They're just going to fluctuate a lot because small numbers do that. But we have been happy that hospitalizations haven't been exponentially increasing or increasing with the case rate as much. So that is good news so far.
So Multnomah County never got to the point where it could get past the first stage of reopening. The numbers just never got down far enough. Should we expect that, we're locked in until next July?
I don't think so. I think that we're all aware, and the governor's office and the state public health division are aware that the governor needed to set some metrics and guidelines and a pathway forward, knowing that we were very early and it was not an exact science, and that we all may need to modify either the metrics or modify which business sectors need to do what to comply with a certain level of protection in order to be able to be in phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, as the science advanced and as we learned from other areas. The experiment is to look at what's happening in other regions nationally and then say, that's going well, what are they doing? Or, oh, that's going really off the rails. What did they not do? Or what did they do in a way that maybe we could do better? So I think we've all expected that we were going to need to revisit what counts as phase 1, what counts as phase 2. Do the metrics need to be changed or other metrics emphasized more? And I think that process of dialogue is going on right now between the governor's office, state public health, local government leadership throughout our state.
So you expect to see the metrics change?
The metrics may change a bit. Who gets counted as phase 1, phase 2? Is there sort of a phase 1.25 or a phase 1.5, so to speak? We've seen that a little bit here and there with changes in guidance for childcare or playgrounds can open. So I think that that's constantly being reevaluated, and it may be that some of those stipulations of what hasn't been able to be opened because of phase 2, we may get guidance coming out that if folks can do this or that in their business, then they do get the okay to open. So we may see that shift. I'm not participating in those dialogues, but I know those dialogues are happening right now.
This is going to sound a little self-righteous, but also I don't care. As somebody who has spent the last 6 months staying home and staying safe and going slightly crazy, the idea that we're not actually going to defeat the virus, but in fact are just going to lower the standards is a little infuriating. How should I take any trust in either the government or my neighbors that nobody actually stayed home and stayed safe, and now we're just going to create a different metric?
I think there's a couple ways to look at it. First of all, we had metrics at first that we were measuring and counting, and we've gotten a little bit more savvy and a little bit more sophisticated about what we're looking at and how, and also about understanding how much do each of those metrics actually tell us about the spread of disease in ways that should actually be creating government policy or business policy. So I think that we may change metrics just because we understand better how to use them. I also think that it's probably not as simple as just saying, you know what, we're never going to get what we want with those metrics. Let's just lower the expectation, lower the standard, lower the threshold. I think that it may be a mix of that plus some new and different guidance about what needs to happen to make things more safe so that they can be open safely. So I don't think it's just about changing the benchmark, if you will. I also do think that it's important to not use language about transmission that makes it seem like the reason we have all this transmission is because people individually made bad behavior choices. There are a number of places where work sites are very difficult to make perfectly safe, and transmission happens there, and the employees that are working there are doing what they can, and oftentimes the employers are as well. And then sometimes when those folks are going home to households, of groups of folks that live together, it's really hard within a household sometimes to be able to isolate or quarantine. So I just want to be thoughtful about our language. I know that some people personally in life assess risk and make different choices. And there's also some ways that depending on how much income you have a little bit more opportunity or privilege to set things up in a way that's safer for you than other folks. So I think it's complicated there, and we both need to continue to work on people's individual choices and their individual sense of responsibility for our community as a whole. And we also need to keep working on the systems fixes that we need to make things safe also.